The Vietnam War, a conflict that spanned 2 decades, is one of the most significant chapters in 20th century history. This was a battle between ideologies, with North Vietnam and its communist allies on one side and South Vietnam, supported chiefly by the United States, on the other. The war was fueled by the stark contrast between the principles of communism and democracy, causing ripples that would resonate across the globe. The Vietnam War, characterized by its intensity, complexity, and far-reaching implications, is a story that unfolds over time. The Vietnam War officially began in 1955, but its roots can be traced back to the French colonial rule. A struggle for independence was brewing in the heart of Vietnam, a nation that had been under the iron grip of French colonialism for more than 6 decades. The Vietnamese yearning for freedom culminated in the First Indochina War, which marked the end of French rule and led to the division of Vietnam into 2 separate entities: the Communist North under the leadership of Ho Chi Minh and the anti-communist South led by Ngo Dinh Diem. This division, however, was more than just a geographical separation. It was the manifestation of ideological differences that would soon ignite a conflict as intense as it was tragic. Tensions between the North and South escalated, and by 1955, the 2 halves of Vietnam were at war with each other. While this was happening halfway across the world, the United States was watching closely. The domino theory, the belief that if one country fell to communism, others would follow, was deeply ingrained in the American psyche. So when the North, backed by communist allies, started to gain ground, the United States couldn't stand idly by. They stepped in, providing military support to the South and thus marking their official entry into the war. As the conflict escalated, so did the involvement of the United States, setting the stage for a long and brutal war. The Vietnam War was characterized by its grueling guerrilla warfare and the heavy toll it took on both military and civilian lives. As the conflict unfolded, the dynamics of the war shifted dramatically, with several significant events marking turning points. One such event was the Tet Offensive of 1968. This was an audacious attack by the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces on key urban areas across South Vietnam, stunning the American and South Vietnamese armies. Although the offensive was ultimately a military failure for the North, it was a psychological victory, shaking American confidence and sparking widespread skepticism about the war's progress. This skepticism was further fueled by the horrific My Lai massacre in the same year. American soldiers, frustrated and angered by the elusive enemy, killed hundreds of unarmed South Vietnamese civilians in the village of My Lai. The incident, when it came to light, shocked the world and further eroded American support for the war. As the war dragged on, anti-war sentiments grew stronger within the United States. Protests erupted across the country, with citizens demanding an end to the conflict. This pressure, along with the mounting costs of the war, led to the gradual withdrawal of American troops beginning in 1969. The final act of the war came with the Paris Peace Accords in 1973, which intended to establish peace in Vietnam and end direct US military involvement. However, the peace was short-lived as fighting resumed soon after between North and South Vietnam, but without US troops on the ground. In 1975, the inevitable happened. The North Vietnamese forces launched a massive offensive, capturing key cities and eventually reaching Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam. The world watched as the last American personnel were evacuated from the US Embassy in Saigon, marking the end of America's direct role in the Vietnam War. With the fall of Saigon to the North Vietnamese forces, the long and bloody Vietnam War finally came to an end. The end of the Vietnam War left a profound impact on both Vietnam and the United States. With the fall of Saigon in 1975, Vietnam was unified under communist rule. The transition was tumultuous, leading to an exodus of refugees. While the war's physical and psychological scars lingered for decades, Vietnam faced a long road to recovery. Landscapes were devastated, families torn apart, and a generation marked by the horrors of a brutal conflict. Yet, the Vietnamese people's resilience shone through, rebuilding their nation from the ashes of war. Across the Pacific, the United States grappled with its own aftermath. The war had exposed deep divisions within American society and politics. It sparked a wave of anti-war sentiment and distrust in government, transforming the national consciousness. The Vietnam War, with its complex causes, brutal realities, and far-reaching consequences, remains a pivotal episode in modern history.